When we decided to make the move back to Northern California, to my hometown, one of my biggest fears and concerns was that I was going to get depressed again. Because coming back to a place that was so traumatic on so many levels was scary to me. And I knew that there would be a chance of running into my parents who I've been estranged from for 10 years and a lot of different things. And so I was very apprehensive, but I decided to take the advice of my husband and my friend who said, you're a different person. You've come a long way. You've healed. The town is much different. And honestly, I will say that I'm very surprised it's been 6 months and I have not ran into my parents at all. So that part of the journey, it was true that the town has expanded and you don't run into people as much as you might think. So when I got here, life didn't really turn out exactly the way we had planned. There was been so many obstacles and challenges and things that we didn't expect that have came up, and we've been troopers, literally we've held it together. We haven't let it tear us apart. And so I'm so proud of us that we have made it this far. But at the same time, there were so many changes. And one thing I learned a long time ago was that regardless if the change is positive or good or something you want, sometimes change or too much change can literally send you in a tailspin. Our bodies crave a level of certainty and uncertainty. And so we don't want something too boring, but we also don't want to have things happen that we can't predict, and then we don't know what the outcome is. And that's why people are oftentimes dealing with anxiety. And a lot of times people have a picture of the way things are supposed to be. And then when they don't happen, because life happens, that's a lot of times why depression happens. So once I got back here, things were great. Reality set in. We kept coming up against wall after wall after wall, and I was frustrated, and I really started to miss my girls, and I finally realized that I was suffering from depression, and I had gone off my medication on accident exactly 2 years ago, and I thought that I was doing well, but the symptoms started to gradually creep back, that it took a long time for me to recognize that I was in fact depressed again. So I went back on my meds, and then I decided to start therapy again about 6 weeks ago. When I went into my therapist's office for the first time, we went through the getting to know one another, but I was in really such a depressed state and such a negative state. I couldn't even think of anything positive. And, he asked what are some things you love? And I was like, my brain just went blank. I don't know, besides the obvious, my family. And I came in with a coffee, and he was like, well, you have a coffee. Do you love coffee? I'm like, well, I don't know if that's the right word. He's like, well, does it bring you joy? Do you, there's a reason you got it. I was like, yeah, you're right. It does. And that was all I could really come up with then. So that's going to start a routine for me, is that I've learned that after 22 weeks of living in an RV, after moving cross country, that I don't really need all the things that I thought I needed and all the material things and expenses. And so I really gotten to be more methodical about how I spend my money and figuring out needs versus wants, but also it is important to splurge and to reward yourself sometimes. And I don't think that food needs to be a reward, but coffee is something that I do love. I've always enjoyed it. I've drank it since I was a kid. My children have great memories around drinking coffee with their grandmothers, with me. And so I've made that a thing now. When I go to therapy, I get a coffee. If I have a morning therapy session like today, I get a regular coffee. If I go in the afternoon, I get a decaf. So it's just something that's a little ritual, because, let's face it, going to therapy is hard. It means that you're having to talk about things that might be uncomfortable. You might have to do work that's uncomfortable. You might have to bring up things that you've buried, and you have to make the commitment that you're going to be open and honest, and that you're willing to make the adjustments that are needed to move forward. So that was something we did. The other day, I finally got in after a lot of frustrating months of trying to find a doctor that would prescribe the medication that I'd been taking since I stayed at a mental health facility back in 2015. I waited for this appointment for over 2 months. And I walked in feeling a little apprehensive, like what's going to happen. But I definitely had a more positive, like hope, like I had more hope. And this guy was amazing. He was worth the wait. He spent a whole hour with me asking me a whole slew of questions. And, you know, I've been to therapists and doctors when you're answering their questions and when they go, and they write it down. And the type of brain that I have, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, do they think that I'm fucked up? Like, well, oh, God, is this normal? And then you become kind of paranoid as they're jotting down. But this guy was really amazing. He asked me lots of questions about not just now, but about, you know, the last 5 years since I was a child. And one of the things that he kept asking was like all of the questions were like, yes, yes, yes. Not just now, not just in the last 5 years, but my whole entire life. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand because I put on a positive face. I bitch a lot about things that I want done a certain way, but I really am not a complainer. I was so negative and skeptical and just couldn't stand myself for so long that I've really learned to focus on the positive and just put on a happy face and just do the things I need to do because regardless of how I'm feeling, it needs to be done. But I think a lot of times people don't realize what I struggle with. And one thing that he asked me is like, are you a happy person? And, you know, it kind of got me choked up because I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't feel like I'm miserable, but I feel like I've always been chasing happiness. And obviously, like, duh, everybody wants to be happy. That really goes without saying. But, like, for me, I've always been chasing happiness. Like, and if you've never dealt with mental illness, if you've never dealt with trauma, if you've never, you know, if you weren't instilled with good coping mechanisms, if you've never had addiction, you might not understand this. But for me, obviously, drugs and alcohol were used in a partying scenario. But for me, it was always that brought me some relief. It brought me some happiness. Like, so many of the hard drugs I tried made me feel normal. It made my brain feel normal. And so it became addictions. It became unhealthy. It became illegal, all these different things. But I'm like, I've always been chasing happiness. All the times I did cocaine and meth and mushrooms and pot and alcohol. Like, it was always because I was trying to feel happy. I was trying to feel good. And no matter what, you know, those things were just temporary. And I didn't know how to get it. And I always felt like, is this, you know, something that is I'm not destined for? Is it something that's impossible? Am I expecting way too much? And I don't know. But you know, he was like, okay. He's like, you know, and after all of the questions, you know, one of the things that he said, you know, do you have problems with relationships? I'm like, well, I've been married 3 times. Friends, I seem to grow tired of after a couple of months of spending time with them. I do have some friends that have been long term, but you know, I very much so have relationship problems. And I'm like, I don't know if it has to do with being adopted. I don't know. But after answering all the questions, he was like, have you ever been put on a mood stabilizer? He was like, you know, because you do have a lot of the markers of somebody with bipolar disorder. And I was like, you know, I was diagnosed with it at one point, and then I was told I was misdiagnosed, and I was re-diagnosed with other things. And I'm like, you know, I've tried so many things, so many coping mechanisms. I've tried countless, you know, prescription medications to treat this, and it's never sorted my brain out, my moods, my OCD, my, you know, rapid, you know, thoughts through my brain, like all these different things that I've just struggled with that people don't understand, like what my brain, how it functions. Like the other day I explained to Ryan, like how I got to a certain thought, and it was like in a minute, and he was like, oh my God. He was like, you thought all that, like in that moment of time? I'm like, yeah, that's my everyday moment. That's why I'm so exhausted. So anyways, he was like, I'd like to try to put you on a mood stabilizer. And for the first time, I didn't feel like this doctor was pushing an agenda, pushing a certain prescription medication on me. I really felt like he genuinely cared. And he was like, you're not a disorder. And that's one thing I actually have embraced in the last, you know, few years, is that I am not anxiety. I am not depression. That's part of what I struggle with. It's part of a diagnosis, but it's not me, and it doesn't define me. So it didn't bother me. And he was like, but I'm not really going to diagnose you with this. He was like, what I'm going to do is I want to treat these symptoms because I'm here to help you. I want you to feel better. That is my main goal and mission. And he was like, and if this medication doesn't work, you let me know. He was like, I'm not taking the medication. And I mean, I really felt like I was heard. And that's something that's always bothered me in life, is like when I don't feel heard, it drives me fucking bananas. But I felt heard. I felt like he took the time to talk to me. And I felt like he really genuinely cared, that I was not just a number. I was not just a diagnosis. And so he decided to cut some of the medication that I have back to start weaning me off of it, but not all the way because I've been taking it for years. But he wants to see if this new drug works. It's actually a anti-seizure medication, but they've found that it works for people with manic episodes. And manic, I think a lot of people have the wrong idea and definition in their head of what bipolar is. And so that's why a long time ago I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be bipolar. I thought the world was ending. But now I'm like, it's just something that, another challenge in my life. And with every challenge I've had, amazing things have happened. And I know that I am not the only person out there who is dealing with this. There are successful people, celebrities, amazing, brain surgeons, all these different people who also have this. And it doesn't define them and it doesn't limit them. The only thing that limits yourself and is the way you see it, what story you tell yourself. So anyways, I took this medication. And you take it at night, and he really liked this one because I've had major sleep disorders ever since I was a child. And he was like, it doesn't make you sleepy, but it relaxes you, and so you might sleep better. Well, I didn't, and I haven't, but it's only day 2. He said, come back in 2 weeks, we'll see how it is. But I've been taking it for 2 days, and I don't know if it's like that placebo effect or it's all in my mind, but like I told Ryan yesterday, I'm like, I actually, for the first time, didn't feel like I was worried and panicking all day long. And maybe it's in my head, but this, doctor said, he was like, if this works, you're going to become a totally different person, that you won't even really recognize who you are, to the point that you might be like, I don't want to take this medication. He was like, so I did explain to Ryan, like, watch me, monitor me, but this makes me feel hopeful. Like if I could have some relief from what's going on in my head that's just plagued me my whole entire life, where nobody understands. And I don't really think anybody understands, because everybody who has bipolar or anxiety or depression have different levels, and they have their own different things that they worry about. But yesterday I actually felt like I didn't worry as much as I had been. So yeah, I feel hopeful. So that's just an update for any of you who've been following my quest of, happiness and really facing my mental illness. And I really share this openly because I know that there's other people out there who are struggling with the stigma behind mental illness, who are struggling, feeling hopeless like I have been. And for the first time, with now seeing a therapist for, every week for the last 6 weeks, and we're slowly moving into getting to the EMDR therapy, which will help you with your trauma, and this new medication that might sort out my brain and my moods and not make me so withdrawn at times. And I don't know, I just feel, like I told Ryan last night, I just feel hopeful for the first time. And shit, if this doesn't work, I don't fucking know. But at the moment, I have more hope than I have in a long time. And I just want to feel normal. And I think that word's really relative to each person, but I don't feel normal. My brain doesn't feel normal. It's exhausting to go through the thoughts that I have. I'm really a hypervigilant person. I'm always worried. I'm always concerned. I'm always, in fear of like something happening to somebody, and it's to the point where I can't enjoy life and be present, and I don't want to think that. So I don't know, tonight will be the 3rd night of taking this medication, and so I don't feel like I'm having any bad reactions, so I'm like, woohoo, that's a good thing, because that has always been something that I've dealt with, and it's horrendous whenever you have a bad reaction, and then it's frustrating because you have to try something new and you have to worry that it's gonna happen again. But the one thing that I encourage everybody, whether it's me talking about fitness or relationships or anything, is like, don't give up, keep trying, because just because one thing didn't work doesn't mean that everything in that category won't work, or it doesn't mean that something won't work again. So we'll see. I feel okay. I have a little bit of a headache. I felt a little bit fatigued, but my part-time job became so understaffed that I actually been working more till we hire somebody else, which somebody I think was offered a job last night, but I worked 8 days straight. So the fatigue could have been from that. I don't know. But I feel good, so I will keep you up to date. I'm hoping that this mood stabilizer is the answer. And I feel better. So if you have any of these things that you're struggling with and you just need a sounding board or just somebody to listen, and so you don't feel alone, do know that you're not alone and that you can do amazing things, because I've been struggling with mental illness for a long time, and I feel like I've successfully raised 3 kids. I've built a business that I feel passionately about. I've maintained a lot of great relationships. I will have been married 10 years in April, so I've been able to heal myself somewhat around relationships to make things work. I've done things that I am proud of, and one of the things that I've been doing, and I have a group that's a private group on Facebook, so if anybody's wanting to be part of it, I'm doing this happiness challenge that my therapist challenged me to do. Writing down 3 things I'm grateful for every day. Write down 1 positive experience, meditation, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, exercise, whether it's a 5 or 10 minute walk, whether it's a 30-minute workout like I do, and then 1 random act of kindness. And I've been consistently doing it for the last 4 days, and I'll say what I told him today is that, in the beginning it was like the 1 positive experience was like trying to like pull teeth, figuring out what to do and what to write down. And then last night when I got home, I was like doing my positive experiences, and without even thinking, once the pen hit my journal, I wrote 4 things that were positive. And then in the beginning, like I was like, I don't know what to do about random act of kindness. And yesterday it came to me so naturally. And so here's the thing is like anything you do repetitively and consistently will become a habit, good or bad. And so if you're having a hard time finding things to say positively about your life, about yourself, just start doing something. Start writing down 1 thing, the next day 2 things, the next day 3 things. I mean, as you can, you're going to get better. You're going to find that. And the more you start focusing on the positive, the more positive experiences are going to pop up in your life, and the more you'll be able to spot them. So I encourage you to take on that challenge as well, and to really work on your happiness, and you're focusing on positivity. And if you want to do it in a private group setting with me, just let me know, and I can pop you in the group on Facebook.